Let me tell you about two men. The first was Ronald Read. Ronald Read spent his entire working life doing two things: fixing cars at a gas station for 25 years and sweeping floors at J.C. Penney for 17 years. He lived simply. He bought a small two-bedroom house for $12,000 and stayed there until he died. He never remarried after his wife passed. His main hobby was chopping firewood. When Ronald Read died in 2014 at the age of 92, almost nobody outside his small Vermont town had ever heard of him. Then his will was read, and the world found out that this quiet janitor had left behind more than $8 million. $2 million to his stepchildren, and more than $6 million to his local hospital and library. No lottery win, no inheritance, no secret. He had simply saved what little he could and invested it in the stock market for decades, and then he waited, patiently, quietly, while compounding did the rest. The second man was Richard Fuscone. Richard Fuscone was everything Ronald Read was not. Harvard MBA, executive at Merrill Lynch, retired in his 40s, praised by CEOs, named to 40 under 40 lists. In the mid-2000s, Fuscone borrowed heavily to expand his mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, 18,000 square feet, 11 bathrooms, 2 swimming pools, 7 garages. It cost $90,000 a month just to maintain. Then, 2008 happened. The debts couldn't hold. The mansion was sold at a foreclosure auction for 75% less than its insured value. Fuscone told a bankruptcy judge he had no income. A janitor outperformed a Harvard-trained Wall Street executive, not because of intelligence, not because of access, not because of luck, because of behavior. That is the entire premise of this video, and of one of the most quietly revolutionary books about money ever written, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. This book will not teach you to pick stocks. It will not give you a trading strategy. It will not explain interest rates. It will do something far more valuable. It will show you why you make the financial decisions you make and how to make better ones. Not because you're smarter, but because you understand something most people never examine: the way your mind works with money. Let's begin.
Part 1. No one is crazy. Here's something nobody tells you about financial advice, and it's important. When someone makes a financial decision that seems completely irrational to you, spending money they don't have, ignoring obvious risks, making bets that seem insane, your first instinct is probably to think they're crazy. Morgan Housel says they're not. They're doing something that makes perfect sense, given the unique life they've lived, the economic era they were born into, and the emotional experiences that shaped how they see money. Think about it like this. If you grew up during the Great Depression, if you watched banks fail, if you saw your family lose everything overnight, if food was uncertain, you would have a very different relationship with risk than someone who was 22 years old during the roaring stock market of the late 1990s. The 1999 tech worker saw the market double in a year. Of course they piled in. Of course they borrowed to invest more. The market was going up every single day, and everyone they knew was getting rich. That wasn't stupidity. It was the only financial reality they had ever experienced. And the depression survivor? They kept cash under the mattress and never trusted a bank again. That wasn't paranoia. It was hard-won survival instinct, etched into their bones by lived experience. Morgan Housel writes, "Your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.0000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works." Read that twice. 0.0000001% of actual history, 80% of your worldview. We're all walking around with these incredibly narrow slices of personal financial experience, and we've turned those slices into universal truths we apply to everything. This is why two equally intelligent people can look at the stock market and completely disagree. One says it's obvious you should invest everything you have. The other says it's obvious you should stay far away. They're not disagreeing because one is smart and one is stupid. They're disagreeing because they've literally lived in different financial worlds. And here's the most important implication of this: lottery tickets. Americans spend more money on lottery tickets every year than on movies, video games, music, sporting events, and books combined. And who buys the most lottery tickets? Overwhelmingly, people in the lowest income brackets. People who say they can't come up with $400 in an emergency are spending $400 a year on lottery tickets. To someone with financial security, that looks insane. But think about what the lottery actually is for someone with no path to wealth. It's the only legal way to buy a dream. For a few dollars, you can spend a week genuinely imagining a different life. A house in a safe neighborhood, college for your kids without crushing debt, a doctor's visit without terror about the bill. That dream is worth something real, even if the odds are impossible. You don't have to agree with it, but you can understand it. And that understanding, what you're doing seems crazy to me, but I think I know why you're doing it. That is the foundation of financial wisdom.
Part 2. Luck and risk. The forces we never talk about. Here is one of the most humbling stories in this entire book. Bill Gates went to Lakeside School in Seattle, and Lakeside happened to be one of the only high schools in the entire world in 1968 that had a computer. Not just one of the few in Seattle, one of the few on Earth. Think about that mathematically. In 1968, there were roughly 303 million high school-age people in the world. About 300 of them attended Lakeside. Bill Gates was one of those 300, one in a million, and he used that computer obsessively, stayed late, came in on weekends, built the foundation of what became Microsoft. Bill Gates himself has said it clearly. If there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft. Does that diminish his genius? No. He is genuinely extraordinary, but you cannot tell his story honestly without acknowledging he got extraordinarily lucky. And here is where the story becomes something else entirely. Bill Gates had a best friend at Lakeside, a boy named Kent Evans. By Gates' own account, Kent Evans was the most brilliant student in the class. They talked on the phone endlessly, scheming about their future. Gates still remembers his number, 525-7851, he says. Kent was going to be Gates's partner. They both knew it. But Kent Evans never graduated high school. He died in a mountaineering accident, one of the roughly 35 such deaths in the United States every single year. 1 in a million odds of going to the right school. 1 in a million odds of dying on a mountain. The same force, the same magnitude, pointing in opposite directions. Gates got the luck. Evans got the risk. This changes how we should think about success and failure entirely. Housel is not saying success is only luck. Of course, skill matters. But he is saying that we systematically underestimate how much forces outside our control shape our outcomes, and how much we overestimate the story we tell about why we succeeded or why others failed. When someone rich describes their success, they talk about their habits, their work ethic, their brilliant decisions, and those things are real, but they almost never fully account for the lucky break, the right moment, the door that happened to open. When someone fails, we reach for the clean story. They were lazy, they made bad decisions, they didn't work hard enough. And sometimes that's true, but often the most honest answer is they ended up on the wrong side of a coin flip. The practical lesson here is powerful. Be careful who you admire and be careful who you look down on. The richest person you know may have been brilliant and disciplined, and may have also been born at exactly the right moment, into exactly the right family, in exactly the right economy. Those things don't cancel each other out. They coexist, and the person who failed, before you write their story, make sure you know how much of it they actually wrote themselves. Part 3. Never Enough. The Trap That Ruins Everything. At a party on Shelter Island, the writer Kurt Vonnegut told his friend Joseph Heller, the author of Catch-22, that their host, a hedge fund manager, had made more money in a single day than Heller had made from his famous novel over its entire history. Heller smiled and said, "Yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough. Enough." It's such a simple word, and yet it might be the rarest concept in the entire world of money. Housel tells us about Rajat Gupta. Rajat Gupta grew up in the slums of Kolkata.
orphaned as a teenager. By any reasonable measure, the odds of him becoming anything were near zero, and yet, through extraordinary effort and intelligence, he rose to become the CEO of McKinsey, the most prestigious consulting firm in the world. He partnered with Bill Gates on philanthropic work. He sat on the boards of Goldman Sachs and other major companies. By 2008, Gupta was worth approximately $100 million. $100 million at a 5% annual return generates nearly $600 an hour, around the clock, while he sleeps. He could have done anything. What he wanted was to be a billionaire. He wanted it so badly that he passed secret inside information from Goldman Sachs board meetings to a hedge fund manager. 16 seconds after hanging up one call, he was dialing the next, and made $17 million in illegal profits from those tips. He went to prison. His reputation was destroyed forever. A man who had built everything from nothing, who had achieved what 99.9999% of people never will, risked it all and lost it all, chasing the next number. And then there's Bernie Madoff. Before the Ponzi scheme that made him infamous, Madoff ran a wildly successful, legitimate business that made him tens of millions of dollars a year. Wildly wealthy, genuinely successful. And yet, the fraud. Housel asks the right question. Why would someone with hundreds of millions of dollars risk everything in pursuit of more? The answer is that they had never learned to ask, is this enough? Here is the trap that Housel identifies, and it is everywhere. Modern capitalism is extraordinary at two things: creating wealth and creating envy. And envy, it turns out, is what moves the goalpost. Think about it this way. A rookie baseball player earning $500,000 a year is, by almost any definition in the world, rich. But he plays alongside Mike Trout, who earns $36 million a year, and those rookies feel broke. And Mike Trout, he competes in a world where the top hedge fund managers earn $340 million in a single year. And those hedge fund managers look at Warren Buffett, whose wealth grew by $3.5 billion in 2018, and someone like Buffett could look at Jeff Bezos, whose net worth grew by $24 billion in 1 year. The ceiling on social comparison is so high that virtually nobody ever reaches it, which means if you play that game, you can never win. You can only lose. The only way to win is to refuse to play. And there are things, Housel is very clear about this, that are simply never worth risking for more money. Your reputation, your freedom, your family, the people who love you, your peace of mind. These are not on the table. No additional money is worth them, not $1. The hardest financial skill in the world is learning to stop moving the goalpost. It requires asking a question most of us are never taught to ask. How much is enough? And then having the courage to answer honestly and to stop there.
Part 4. The magic no one believes in. Compounding.
There's a scientific phenomenon that Morgan Housel uses to explain the most counterintuitive truth in investing: ice ages. In the 19th century, scientists discovered that Earth had been covered in ice not once, but 5 separate times. The energy required to freeze an entire planet and then melt it was staggering, so scientists assumed the cause must be equally massive. Volcanic eruptions, shifting mountain ranges, something enormous. The actual answer was almost insulting in its ordinariness. It was a slightly cooler summer. Not a catastrophe, not a geological upheaval, just one summer where the snow from the previous winter didn't quite melt all the way. So the following winter's snow had a little more to build on, and the next, until over thousands of years, a thin layer of unmelted snow became a continental glacier miles thick. As glaciologist Gwen Schultz wrote, "It is not necessarily the amount of snow that causes ice sheets, but the fact that snow, however little, lasts. Not the amount, the fact that it lasts. That is compounding. And nowhere does it matter more than in investing." Warren Buffett's current net worth is roughly $84 billion. Here is the number that most people skip over: $84 billion. Of that, $81.5 billion was accumulated after he turned 65. Read that again. He is one of the greatest investors in history, and 96% of his wealth came after most people retire. Housel runs a thought experiment. What if Buffett had been a normal kid, spent his teens and 20s exploring the world, and started investing seriously at age 30 with $25,000? And what if he still earned his extraordinary returns, 22% annually, but retired at 60 to play golf? What would his net worth be today? Not $84 billion, $11.9 million, 99.9% less. The difference between $11.9 million and $84 billion is not return rate, it's not intelligence, it's time. Buffett started at age 10. He is now in his 90s and still investing. His secret, Housel writes, is not being the greatest investor who ever lived. His secret is having been a good investor for 3/4 of a century. That's it. A few more years at the beginning, a refusal to stop at the end. Time in the market doing its quiet, invisible mathematical work. And here's why we consistently miss this lesson. Compounding is not intuitive. Our brains are wired to think linearly. If you asked me to calculate 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, I could do it in seconds. It's 72. If you asked me to calculate 8 multiplied by itself 9 times, my brain shuts down. The answer, by the way, is 134 million. The same calculation. One is linear, one is exponential. And exponential is simply not how human beings naturally think. The practical takeaway? Stop looking for the big hit. Stop looking for the hot stock. Stop looking for the strategy that doubles your money fast. The investor who earns a steady 7 or 8% and never panics and never quits will almost certainly end up wealthier than the investor chasing 20% returns who sells in every downturn. The question is not, how do I maximize my returns? The question is, how do I build something I can sustain without interruption for the longest possible time? Because that is what compounding actually needs. Not brilliance, just patience and time.
Part 5. Freedom. The highest dividend money pays. What does money actually buy that makes people happy? Most people answer with things. A house, a car, a vacation, nice clothes, travel, experiences. Housel spent years thinking about this question, and he came to a conclusion that is simple but profound enough that I want you to hold it for a moment before we move on. The highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. Not what your boss wants, not what your mortgage demands, not what the emergency on your phone requires, what you want. Control over your time. Morgan Housel writes about his summer internship at an investment bank in Los Angeles. It was everything he had worked toward. The prestige, the salary, the feeling of having arrived. And then he discovered the reality. Going home before midnight was a luxury. The office joke was, if you don't come in on Saturday, don't bother coming in on Sunday. He loved the work. He genuinely enjoyed the intellectual challenge. But every waking second of his time was owned by someone else's demands. He lasted 1 month. And here's the insight. Doing something you love on a schedule you can't control can feel exactly the same as doing something you hate. Psychologists call this reactance, the deeply human need to feel like you're the one choosing your actions. The moment that choice is taken from you, even for good things, resentment begins to form. A famous study asked thousands of elderly Americans about the most important lessons they'd learned from their long lives. 1,000 people, decades of experience, and not a single one said that to be happy, you should work as hard as possible to make more money and buy more things. Not one. What they valued: quality friendships, being part of something bigger than themselves, and spending unstructured time with the people they loved. Your kids don't want your money, the researcher wrote. They want you. Specifically, they want you with them. And here is where money becomes genuinely powerful. Not when you spend it on things, when you use it to buy back your time. A small emergency fund means you can take a few sick days without terror. A few months of savings means you don't have to take the first job you're offered when you get laid off. You can wait for the right one. A year of runway means you're not terrified of your boss, because you know you'd be okay if you had to leave. And eventually, if you build enough, you reach the place Derek Sivers describes. The musician who saved $12,000 by age 22, quit his day job, and never worked for anyone else again. He wasn't rich, not by any standard definition, but he was free. And freedom, Housel says, is what we're actually after when we think we want wealth. We just forget to name it correctly.
Part 6. The Man in the Car Paradox. Morgan Housel worked as a valet at a nice hotel in Los Angeles as a young man. He got to drive extraordinary cars, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Rolls-Royces. And he observed something about himself that he couldn't shake. When a beautiful car rolled up, he would stop and stare. His whole attention went to the car. He imagined himself in it. He thought about what it would feel like to own something like that. But the driver, he barely noticed them. He was looking at the car and imagining himself in it. And here is the paradox that most people buying luxury items never see. When you drive a Ferrari, you think people are admiring you, but they're actually admiring the car and imagining themselves in it. They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. You bought the car hoping it would make people think you're impressive, successful, worthy of admiration. What actually happened is that you gave them a prop to project their own fantasies onto, while remaining largely invisible. The letter Housel wrote after his son was born said this: "You might think you want an expensive car, a fancy watch, and a huge house. But I'm telling you, you don't. What you want is respect and admiration from other people, and you think having expensive stuff will bring it. It almost never does, especially from the people you want to respect and admire you." This is not an argument against wealth, or even against beautiful things. It's a gentle reminder to be honest about what we're actually buying. If you want admiration, humility and kindness will get you more of it than any car ever will. If you want to feel significant, the relationship you build with your children or the work you do in your community will deliver what the Ferrari promises but cannot keep. And if you genuinely just love the car, buy it, but be clear with yourself about why. Part 7. Wealth is what you don't see. There's a man Housel calls Roger. Roger drove a Porsche to the hotel where Housel worked. People drew immediate conclusions. Successful, rich, made it. Then one day, Roger showed up in a beat-up Honda, and the week after that, and the week after that. Housel asked what happened to the Porsche. Repossessed. Roger had defaulted on the loan. Los Angeles, Housel writes, is full of Rogers. Here is the invisible truth about wealth that we almost never talk about. Someone driving a $100,000 car might be wealthy, but the only thing you know about them from seeing that car is that they have $100,000 less than they did before they bought it, or $100,000 more in debt. That is all you know. We judge wealth by what we can see: the car, the house, the clothes, the watch, the vacation photos. But these things are the opposite of wealth. Wealth is what you haven't spent yet. Wealth is the options and freedom sitting invisibly in a brokerage account or a savings fund that no one will ever see at a dinner party. Singer Rihanna nearly went bankrupt after overspending and sued her financial advisor. His defense essentially was it really necessary to tell her if you spend money on things, you will end up with the things and not the money? The answer, it turns out, is yes. People need to hear this. Because when most people say they want to be a millionaire, what they actually mean is they want to spend $1 million, which is the literal opposite of being a millionaire. Rich means high current income, that's visible. That's the Ferrari and the mansion. Wealthy means income not yet spent. That's invisible. That's freedom, options, and the ability to survive whatever comes next. Ronald Reed, the janitor who left $8 million to charity, was wealthy. Richard Fuscone, the Harvard executive with the mansion and the debt, was rich. The world is full of people who look rich and live on the edge of financial disaster, and it's full of people who look completely ordinary and are quietly accumulating more freedom than most people can imagine. The goal is not to look wealthy. The goal is to be wealthy, and those two things, very often, pull in opposite directions. Part 8. Saving, Survival, and Room for Error. There's a pattern in every one of the stories in this book, and Morgan Housel names it clearly. Getting wealthy and staying wealthy are two completely different skills. Jesse Livermore was perhaps the greatest stock trader of his era. In a single day during the 1929 crash, he made the equivalent of more than $3 billion in today's money, while the market collapsed around him and wiped out fortunes everywhere he looked. His wife thought they were ruined when he came home. He told her they were fabulously wealthy. 4 years later, Livermore lost everything. Overconfident, he took bigger and bigger bets. He died by his own hand, broke and ashamed. The skill that got him wealthy, aggressive, brilliant, bold trading was exactly the skill that made him incapable of staying wealthy. Getting wealthy requires taking risks. Staying wealthy requires something harder to maintain: paranoia, frugality, the constant recognition that what you have can be taken away just as fast as it arrived. Housel talks about the survival mindset, the idea that the most important financial goal is not maximum returns, but not being wiped out. Because being wiped out ends the game, and the game has to keep going for compounding to work. This is why Buffett's list of things he didn't do is almost as important as what he did. He didn't get into crushing debt. He didn't panic and sell during crashes. He didn't attach himself to any single strategy or trend. He didn't rely on other people's money. He didn't burn out and quit. He survived for 75 years, and survival gave compounding the time it needed. And then there's room for error. The best card counters in Las Vegas know they have the statistical edge, but they also know, even with the edge, bad luck is real. So they never bet everything, no matter how certain they feel. They always keep enough in reserve that a losing streak won't put them out of the game. This is margin of safety, room for error, the buffer between what you expect to happen and what could go wrong. Because plans fail, markets crash, emergencies arrive, jobs disappear, health deteriorates. The future refuses to cooperate with the spreadsheet. A financial life built with room for error survives those moments. A financial life built on optimistic precision shatters when reality shows up. The simplest practical form of this? Save money. Not for a specific purpose, just because you cannot predict everything that's coming, and having savings is the only honest response to a future that will always contain surprises.
Part 9. Reasonable beats rational.
One of Housel's most counterintuitive ideas is this: don't try to be perfectly rational with your money. Try to be reasonable. There's a difference. Rational means finding the mathematically optimal strategy and executing it flawlessly. Reasonable means finding a strategy that's good enough and that you can actually live with without losing your mind. Harry Markowitz won the Nobel Prize for developing the mathematical model of optimal portfolio allocation. When asked how he invested his own money in the 1950s when he was building these theories, he said, "I visualized my grief if the stock market went way up and I wasn't in it, or if it went way down and I was completely in it. My intention was to minimize my future regret, so I split my contributions 50-50 between bonds and equities." The Nobel Prize winner in finance managed his own money based on how he'd feel. Not the math, the feeling. And that, Housel says, is completely fine, because the strategy you can actually live with is infinitely better than the optimal strategy you'll abandon the first time markets get scary. The fever is a perfect metaphor here. Medical science actually shows that fevers, up to a certain temperature, help the body fight infection. They serve a real purpose. So, rationally, you should let a mild fever run its course. But when you're lying in bed shivering, you don't want the scientifically optimal approach. You want it to stop, so you take the medicine. Is that rational? Not exactly. Is it reasonable? Absolutely. The best financial decisions are not the ones that maximize return on a spreadsheet. They're the ones that maximize your actual ability to stay in the game, sleep at night, stay married, and keep showing up over decades.
Closing. The things that actually matter. Let me bring it back to where we started. Ronald Reed, the janitor who died with $8 million. Not because he was the smartest investor, not because he got lucky, not because he had some secret formula no one else knew. Because he understood something that Richard Fuscone, with all his education and credentials, never did. He understood enough. He understood that wealth is built in the gap between what you earn and what you spend. He understood that time, decades of patient, undramatic compounding would do what no hot stock tip ever could. He understood that freedom from financial panic is worth more than any luxury good. He understood that the goal of money is not to impress strangers. It's to live the life you've chosen on your terms for as long as you can. And at the end of his life, by the measurement that actually matters, not his bank statement, but his impact on the people and community he loved, Ronald Read was immeasurably rich. The Psychology of Money is not a book about stocks or bonds or investment strategies. It is a book about you, about how your childhood shaped your relationship with risk, about how your ego shapes your spending, about how your fear shapes your decisions in the moments when those decisions matter most. Morgan Housel gives us 20 chapters of hard-won wisdom, and if I had to distill them into a single idea, it would be this: behavior beats brilliance every time. The ordinary person who saves consistently, stays the course, avoids catastrophic mistakes, and gives compounding the time it needs will, over a long enough life, almost always outperform the genius who can't manage their own emotions. You don't need to be Ronald Read. You don't need to live his life. But you might want to borrow his philosophy. Live below your means. Invest patiently. Give time. Know what enough looks like, and hold on to your freedom like it's the most precious thing money can buy, because it is.
The book is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. It's short. It's one of those rare books you can finish in a weekend and carry for a lifetime. I cannot recommend it strongly enough. If this video gave you something today, one idea, one shift in how you think about your own money story, share it with someone who needs it. And tell me in the comments, which idea hits you hardest? Was it the Ronald Read and Richard Foscone contrast? The compounding math? The man in the car paradox? The concept of enough? I want to know. Because the conversation about money, the real one, the psychological one, is one we don't have nearly enough. Take care of yourself. See you in the next one.